Welcome, everyone, to Los Libertinos podcast. I am your host, Carlos Abelard, and this is Chingazos and Fire, episode number 48. Our guest today is Pete Quinones. He is the host of the Pete Quinones podcast, formerly known as the Freeman Beyond the Wall podcast. He has over 760 plus episodes. He has a Substack called By Any Means Necessary. And this is his second time on the show. So if you want to get more of a personal take, check out episode number 18, which I'll put in the show notes. Welcome, Pete.
Oh, thank you for having me back on, Carlos. And I just wanted to say the Substack, I got so sick and tired of saying, okay, the address is petequinones.substack.com that I bought petesubstack.com and redirected it to it.
more the efficiencies. There you go. So I'll put the link to that for sure in the show notes. You can send them to me and I'll put them in there for sure.
Sure, thank you.
Thanks for coming on. On this time around, like I mentioned, I thought we got a little bit more on a personal take on the first run, but this one I kind of wanted to have my audience get a more of a introduction and get a little bit more material on what you kind of do on your show. So if you don't mind, could you do a background on your show, meaning like what motivated you to take the first steps towards it and kind of your how it's grown from Freeman Beyond the Wall through COVID to where it is now, and then we'll get into some of the show.
Sure. Well, back in 2017, when everything was just going crazy, Trump is in power, and well, not really. I mean, they took his power away real quick, but I just was trying to figure out a way that I could contribute. And I had a pretty active Twitter account sharing memes and stuff like that. And it just got to the point where I wanted to, just have some way where I'm a smart guy. I know how to talk. I know how to write. And I'm like, what do I want to do? So I had this idea of doing like a podcast review where I would go through like libertarian podcasts and like listen to the episode and then doing like a 500 to 600 word review. And then I realized that even back then, there was a lot of libertarian podcasts and that was going to be a lot of work. So I was like, I'm lazy as hell. And that sounds just awful. So I had some recording experience. So I pulled out a microphone, got Audacity, and just decided, I'll start doing some short episodes on what I think liberty, what being free would be all about. And I did that for like 15, 16, 17 episodes. And then I noticed that people on Twitter, there was a guy on Twitter, I noticed he was an ex-cop. And he said, if you want to talk, if you have a podcast, reach out to me. So I reached out to him and we talked, and people liked it, said that they thought I was a good interviewer. So I just started interviewing people, and just it grew from there. It started blowing up when I decided I was going to write a little book incorporating memes into it. And so Dave Smith had me on his show. Tom Woods had me on his show to talk about it. Mark Claire had me on his show to talk about it. And my audience started to grow. And from there, I just like put my head down and just tried to talk to everybody that I possibly could and have good interviews. And everything was going great. And then, February of 2020 rolls around. Well, January of 2020, I'm reading articles about this thing, this flu. And I'm like, yeah, this isn't anything. And then February, it starts getting serious. That's all anyone's talking about. They're talking about shutting down the NBA. They're talking about shutting down, not doing the Major League Baseball. They're going to interrupt hockey. I'm like, this is billions of dollars that they're going to lose. This better start taking this seriously. And then, for about a week, I was like, man, I better keep my hands washed and everything like that. I was never into wearing masks at all. I mean, even at work, I wouldn't do it. And it took me about a week to figure out, okay, when the numbers started rolling in and you started seeing who was like dying from this, and it was all people who were like in their 70s and older, I was like, all right, this is something different. And I took a big turn and I said, we've entered into a new phase of tyranny. I was an adult when 9/11 happened. I remember what happened after 9/11. This is much worse. And I just started talking about it with everyone, anyone I could talk to, people I hadn't talked to before, just reaching out to anyone. And right around the middle of 2020, I really started, thinking that, okay, this libertarian ideology that I've been preaching for all these years and everything is nobody wants it. People want to be locked down. And it just I just started looking outside of libertarianism. So, I found somebody who used to be a libertarian, and then I started reading a very prolific writer named Curtis Yarvin. So I started reading what he was saying about it. And what I realized was that a lot of his solutions were still within the libertarian realm. And like my solutions still have definitely like the things that I think the way through this is still have a lot of libertarianism in it. I don't like the whole thing of there's a certain morality that people attach to libertarianism. Like it's the most moral thing. Well, it's like, well, I mean, the people locking you down don't have any morals. So it's like, I mean, if you're going to use morals to fight against people who will lock you down and starve you and take away your wealth and you know make you stick a needle into your arm and so you can work, I don't know if this is the way to go and everything. So, I don't call myself a libertarian anymore, but there are definitely like when I envision, a society that I'd want to live in, there are libertarian values there. And I would like pretty much almost everything to be privatized up to a certain point. I think there might be some things that could have problems privatizing that I've seen, just things that I've seen over the past couple of years and everything, and things that are coming out now. But that was pretty much it. And up to this point, I'm just basically I do what I want. Basically, it's like if I get an idea in my head that I'm like, okay, I want to talk about the Articles of Confederation up through the Constitution. So Brian McClanahan's the guy to talk to. So I reached out to him, and it took 6 months to get that interview, but I got it. And then World War II was something that always interested me. So my buddy Jose Nino, he told me about Thomas 777, and I reached out to Thomas, and now we're doing this multi-episodes. I don't even know how many episodes it is right now. It has to be over 10, where we're just going over how the buildup from like World War I and through World War II. And there's other things, reading parts of books like Imperium. I'm getting ready with Taylor from Hoppian.org. We're going to read Hoppe's essay that was adapted from a speech, Libertarianism and the Alt-Right. We're going to do that one, which should really upset some people. That'd be fun. And I mean, I've pretty much put out what I think that people haven't heard. Things that people just you're not hearing on other podcasts. And I'm not saying that other podcasts are bad. I'm just saying that I have my own thoughts on current events.
No,
I don't need to listen to someone tear apart current events and everything like that. So, but if somebody's like doing some insane history or something like that, or readings, or something like that's the kind of stuff that I'm into now. So that's what I'm bringing to my show.
That's perfect. Yeah, I have here in my show notes here, DJ Pete. And the reason I had that on my note was because when I first reached out to you several weeks ago, it was because I had gone into I'm part of like a weekly men's group chat. And when I got into the video chat, the first, when I got in, I hear, oh, Pete, and he's gone dark. He's gone too dark, and he had this guy on Michael Jones, and he's gone down. And I was like, and I had not heard the interview, but in that conversation, in that group, we got into different areas, and I remember just being like telling them like, but Pete's kind of like a DJ. He kind of like puts in the new stuff. Some of the old stuff's already getting dust, and maybe he'll take some of like So like I've always, even when I interviewed you the first time, and I just kind of always got that vibe that you're putting the stuff out there that sets the tone. But yeah, you definitely are setting some type of pace out there. But So right off the bat, then on that episode number 750 with Dr. E. Michael Jones, he kind of goes into the realms of basically like an overall like the Jewish conspiracy from.
It's called the
I mean,
JQ.
it goes with
It's referred to as the Jewish question.
Jewish question. Okay, so from back then to now, but in that group chat, they were kind of putting some words into your mouth, and I guess, and then that's when I was like, you know what, I'm gonna reach out and just talk to him, and besides that one, we're gonna get into a lot of other episodes that I've jammed and I like. So on that question, what was that interview when you were hearing his information? How did you digest it, and then kind of what is your take on the whole? I mean, there's a lot of fronts like Israeli Palestine, Zionism, I guess even like the Jewish question, all of that. I mean, just go ahead and freestyle on that, please.
Well, I mean, the Jewish question is, why is it that whenever you look at an organization that wields power and especially social power, the names that founded it and run it are usually Jewish when they're like 2% of the world population. So yeah, I don't think that that's it's I tweeted out in all caps, I think it was yesterday or the day before, stop noticing things. It's because when you start noticing like patterns and you start asking questions about those patterns, people get upset. When you're like, okay, so how come, African Americans are 13% of the population, but they commit over 50% of the violent crime? No one wants to tackle that. It's just like talking about, why is it that, Jewish people run the Federal Reserve, pornography, banking, entertainment system, I mean, the entertainment industry. Why is the diamond cartel, all these things? And when you're 2% of the population, and people have been trained in the 20th century not to ask questions about things like that. And I think it's a valid question. It's like, well, when you look at communism, why was the founder and so many of the people who continued it and wrote about it Jewish? I mean, communism is basically a Jewish ideology. Okay, so they invaded after World War I. They started invading Germany because Weimar, because Germany was completely weakened and devastated by World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, and it just seems like every interest that went into there was Jewish and was run by somebody who was Jewish. And then you look at something like Winston Churchill taking England into World War II. I mean, Hitler didn't declare war on England. England declared war on Germany. Okay, so the focus group was a Zionist organization that was funding um, funding Churchill and all. I mean, okay, so why? Just why? And why can't I ask these questions? Why is it verboten to notice things? And when you notice patterns, I mean, I've heard good explanations for the Jewish question. Why are Jews in control of so many different things? When you look at something, and when you look at like
can you give that, because some of my audience would not have heard it? What are the some of the replies that you've heard that you're like, okay,
well, I mean, and some of them, okay, so according to Douglas Murray, the bell curve, Jews on average have a very high IQ. So you would expect people in places of leadership to have high IQs. They'd be smart people. Okay, but the Asians have the highest IQ on the planet. How come they're not running banking? How come they're not running the entertainment industry? How come they're not running the pornography industry? How come they didn't found these things? How come they didn't found communism? How come, these are questions that, if somebody's going to make that excuse, sure. And I mean, really, that's the best excuse I've ever heard. It makes sense, but it's still 2% of the population, and still Asians have the highest have a higher IQ by far. And I mean, you look at Nigerians. I mean, the amount of Nigerian engineers, they're not, they're not taking over anything. So why? So why them, and why the desire to be in powerful positions? Or is it a desire at all? And maybe there's just a system set up for that to happen.
Yeah.
So here, I'll give you an example. Okay. So like 1890 is really the year that most historians point to, that a lot of um, people of Jewish descent started coming into the United States in numbers. 15 years later, 1905, there is do you know what a pogrom is? Okay. So over the centuries, different countries have been accused of doing pogroms, which basically is the country rebels against the Jewish population that has moved in there, and they kill a bunch of them, and then they throw them out of the country. Okay. So in 1905,
sounds fucked up.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's happened in 109 different countries. Okay. So so I mean, if I have 109 ex-girlfriends, you say I'm an asshole. But so 1905 in, I think it's in Odessa in Russia, because Odessa is part of Russia at this point. I mean, it's really Ukraine, but yada yada. There's a pogrom, and the United States government sanctions and just comes down hard on Tsar Nicholas and the Russian Empire. Well, why? Because in 15 years, people who were friendly to Judaism had insinuated themselves into the government. This is clear. You can look back and you can research this. Why would the US government in 1905 care about something that happened in Odessa, of all places? I mean, a place that historically has been like connected with criminality and things like that. This happened. So, and all of a sudden, the United States government is upset about that and is willing to sanction. And it's
so my take, because I have no personal attachment to like I don't know, like Israel or anything like that. I mean, people, so I don't really care, but my take was always that I don't know, they've been like, they're like us, like you even said it, like 109 ex-girlfriends. Yeah, they're like a stateless people, right? They kind of freestyle a lot. And don't they have to freestyle because basically everybody thinks like they killed Jesus, or like, they call him basically Jesus killer. And if like killers, like, so I would think that over time, if their culture is nice and tight because they believe they're like the chosen people or whatever, like over time, they're going to create these lineages that are always going to help each other out. And whatever industry they're in, they're going to try to help their family out and stuff like that. So that's the way I've always kind of taken it. And then if anything, like I've always taken it like as like, okay, well then they're winning, and we should probably take lessons on how they're winning. If they have a small percentage of the population and their agenda and their stuff is going, like, I'm not a hater. I'm like, like, hey, don't hate the player, hate the game, but like, somehow they figured out a way to put their agenda forward. And although some people would say or whatever, oh, it's detrimental to our foreign policy or sure, I mean, yeah, but like, again, like, I don't care if whatever happens to the state of it, like, it's too far away from Texas for me to even care. But like, so they have an agenda and they're putting it through. But that's the way I've always taken it. So even when I hear you talk about they left, they got kicked out. I've never heard of that term. Yeah, like, so you're basically saying like they got kicked out because they quickly knew how to infiltrate the power structure to protect themselves. I mean, that doesn't sound too like bad if they're gonna try to protect themselves because they're always getting told that they killed the savior or whatever. I don't know. Am I weird to think like that, or
I don't know if that's the reason.
That's my easy take, man. That's my West Side take there, man. Like a Mexican, like I don't read the books or anything. I just take it like, oh, they're just protecting themselves as a community.
Oh, sure. I mean, I don't know that everything has to do with, oh, you killed Jesus. I mean, they weren't only kicked out of Christian countries. Yeah. So that pretty much puts a dagger in that one right
Sure.
there. Um, well, Thomas Sowell talks about, I think, God, I can't remember what book he talks about it in. I think it's in Discriminations and Disparities, but he basically he includes this in almost every book. He talks about intermediaries. So, like, you have in South Central Los Angeles, which is predominantly black, who owns the grocery stores? Koreans, and that causes tension because people are people are like, well, this is our neighborhood, this is where we're from. Why is somebody from the outside controlling commerce, basically? So that causes rifts, and that's something that's also, the Jewish people have done that for years too. Been intermediaries, banking, other things. I mean, trade. I mean, when I was growing up, a really close family we were really close with, the father was a leather trader, and he got most of his leather from Israel and everything. And that's just what he did. That's what he did. I don't know how many other leather traders, people who did leather jackets and stuff like that were in New York, working independently, but that's what he did. And it just caused that seems to cause rifts. And the reason I mentioned the South Central is that that's the easiest one for us to understand. But we've seen it in movies. It's true. It's in movies because it's true, that when you have somebody from the outside who is not like you, who comes in and they seem to be controlling, um, taking income out of the neighborhood too. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying, that's really smart. One thing, if you can keep money in your own, if you can keep your money in your own, neighborhood or in your own culture, in your own
Network,
community.
your network and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're doing really well. I think I read something about how in Asian communities in the United States, like if a dollar stays in for a dollar that's made stays in the community for like 28 days or 45 days or something like that. And in African American communities, it stays in for like a day. It's
Mm.
like it's gone. It's out. It's outside the community because there aren't enough African American black owned businesses to keep it inside. So yeah, I think that's one of the main reasons, and there's something to Soul, and I think Soul is a good person to talk about
What
that.
what about the and I had not and I never knew this, and it was in that conversation we had talking about others, was that I guess religiously, like Judaism allows for like you can charge interest and stuff like that. And I guess back then it was like looked down upon, I guess, to charge interest or do different kind of stuff like that. And I guess Judaism allowed it. And somebody had brought that up, and then to me my brain just went to, oh, well, then that's why they're into banking, because they've had a super head start in front for a long time. And then banking touches all kinds of businesses. So then it's just, I don't go too fast to go into like, but and I'm also not saying that it's that simple. Like I'm not, oh, I don't got it figured out. But my brain just works like that. Like I'll go, oh, okay, well then that's why, but so that's why when I hear you talk about like the banking, I always think like, well, yeah, because they were already creating all these different, networks of banking from back then and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, so I mean, I guess I'm not. I mean, when I heard the conversation, the episode, I took it just like that. I said he has his ideas. Uh, some of them seem like they might have a little of his agenda in it, but that's okay. Everybody does. And I just heard it, and I just thought it was like you putting on an episode, like something for us, your audience, to jam, and then it once you put it on the airwaves, like it's up to us to jam it, turn it off, talk about it, or whatever, and that's just the way that I kind of took that episode. So no, I enjoyed it, but even by just saying that, if anybody ever looked into it, they might be like, "Oh, Carlos likes." No, I ain't saying that. I'm just saying I enjoyed listening to ideas, whether they're yours or theirs, So I got no beef with it, man. I always like the stuff you're doing on that front.
Well, the whole banking thing is, I mean, the Bible and the Old Testament is very clear to not charge usury, to not charge interest. So, the Jewish people have to go outside of that, and that's why the Talmud was created, in order to look at these things that the Bible says you can't do, and to
I
reason.
know nothing about the
Yeah,
if you tell me a little bit so what they created it so there's the Old Testament, New Testament,
sure,
and now there's
Torah. The Torah is the law. That's the
okay.
first 5 books of the Bible, and that's their law. And it clearly says in there you're not allowed to charge interest. So, you know, the somebody I don't know the history of the Talmud, but what I do know is that the Talmud basically was created to like ask these questions and like present these scenarios and get it's a way. And pretty much for a lot of people, and even Jewish people have told me this, it's a way to get around the laws that are in the Torah. And so they explain away having to use interest. And the problem is that for, you know, 1800 years after Christ, for not that long, probably 1600, the Christians just would not charge interest because the Bible said do not charge interest. So when banking came along, and especially central banking came along, and there were great debates about charging interest, about we're going against the Bible here. And the, the Jewish people had already figured out a way around that. So I'm I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We're always trying to find ways around, trying to find ways to rationalize the things we do and everything. And I'm not even saying that interest is bad. I'm just saying that that's the history of what happened. And Christians for centuries wrestled with it and would not charge interest. And so yeah, that's where it goes with banking and everything. And now, and with central banking, and especially with fiat currency, interest is insane. I mean, because when you take out a loan, you're going to be charged interest, and the loan is just created out of thin air. Like if you take out $50,000, if you take a loan of $50,000 from the bank isn't going into their vault and giving you $50,000. They're printing that just basically with keystrokes.
Magic, man. It's magic.
You have to pay that back with interest. Thing is, they didn't create the interest. So you actually you're actually paying them back for something that they didn't, that wasn't a debt to them. And on top of that, they're taking more that wasn't even created. So it's like, when you look at it, you can't, if you were to like pay off all the debts in the world, the US dollar you couldn't even do it because they didn't print interest. So the debt can never be paid off. It can just be forgotten. It has to be like ignored. It has to be like, fuck you, we're not paying this. I mean, that's basically what it comes down to.
Yeah, but that's no, for sure. Yeah, the interest and all that. Yeah, that's why I always kind of say, well, not always, it's the truth. I've only read 2 books in my life, from the beginning to end, where I didn't put it down, and that was Rich Dad Poor Dad and In the Fed. And after I read those 2, I was kind of like, oh, the game. But I didn't. But anyway, so yeah, another episode that I found very interesting, because I've heard them before on other podcasts, but it was episode 732 that you had with James Corbett. I think you say his name.
Yes,
George
Corbett.
Corbett. Okay. And in that episode, again, a good listen, man, great listen. What I remember that stayed with me, because there was a lot of things that I was grasping, but sometimes I try to grasp at a lot of things and then I don't retain them. But the one that I did retain was you guys were having a conversation basically about like the power structure, and you might have brought up kind of the hierarchy of it, and then he kind of brought up there's probably a lot of hierarchies that are horizontal in different ways, so they're all networked and they complement each other. Also, since the last time I interviewed you, I had never heard at that time and stuff like that, like the elite theory, the 80-20, 20 Pareto theory, all those kinds of different things like that. And so in that conversation, when you guys talked about this network and maybe like, who owns Disney? And he kind of mentioned, well, I wouldn't doubt it if this investment firm BlackRock probably owns something in Disney, right? So I wrote down BlackRock. And then he mentioned some other guy's name that was a guy that was basically talking about how the elites kind of network with each other. And I forgot. I saw some of his videos. Anyway, yeah, man, it's fucked up. this so what I took away was like but what I took away was that it was a visual of like seeing these networks and kind of seeing that it was a closed system and we're just watching it, watching them play. And maybe you can get into it, and it requires entrance into, I guess, like the Ivy League schools, or you got to be an entrepreneur that somehow makes a product that gets you a bunch of money to get into these things. The fascinating story behind this whole little comment here was that I looked up the owner of BlackRock, which is this guy named Larry Fink. Fink is his name. Larry Fink, I think is his name. And
Mhm.
he was a California guy, and so he's the guy that
What religion is he?
I don't know what he is. Oh, is he? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Well, fair enough. I don't know that. We're bringing it back. See, I didn't even care to look that up, but okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
So, but what I got off of him was that he failed. He did good. He failed, and then he finally created this, I guess, like this investment firm that also had this technology that requires the companies that they invest in to give them information to counter risk. I mean, very smart. Like I was like, man, that's badass. That's amazing. But now he's the one that is pushing all of this through this companies. But also, he's not on. He doesn't put his face out there in the front. You don't really hear this name a lot. But he's the one that's doing this ESG systems and all that. So I guess my question to you is, when I know that you've heard this over the years of all of these networks and all these systems working together, but I guess like for my audience and for people that have not heard this, and for people to maybe tune into some of these episodes, that's why I'm name dropping the episodes. Like, talk about how you digest this information, and how you, if you were talking to somebody with a simpleton mindset, like the person you're talking to now, how would you kind of tell them like, hey, this is the way it works, man. These 80-20 theories, these elites, this and that. So again, man, a freestyle on that one too, if you don't mind, please.
Sure. Well, if you look at the history of basically government, it's always run by a minority. Pretty much, there is no such thing. People talk about democracy, and democracy is, I think libertarians like to say, oh, it's 50.1% voting the 49.9% into slavery, something like that. That's not how it is. I mean, if you're voting, you've been given, you've been handed choices. Okay. It's not like you're not voting for the guy who owns the shoe repair store down the street. You're not voting for a cobbler. He's not going to make it onto the stage. It's going to be very hand selected people. And even Trump. I mean, Trump wasn't hand selected, but they had this thing that came out in one of the WikiLeaks that it was called Hillary Clinton's Pied Piper strategy. So Hillary thought that the person that would be the easiest to beat was Trump. So she had all of her friends in the media promote Trump. So, and it backfired on her.
I remember that. Do you remember when Rand Paul would say, they're giving him $1 billion worth of free advert? Like, so he knew something was up, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's not stupid. He's like, wait a minute, why is the only Republican they're talking about is Trump when I'm up here, and and what's his name was up there too? The Bush, the one from Texas.
Yep.
Well, I mean, Florida. Yeah. Jeb. Yeah. Low energy Jeb. Why aren't they talking about the Bush? Don't they want a Bush Clinton rematch? Come on, and it just, what you realize that there's this elite group of people who always run everything. You can go back to Rome. You can go back to ancient Rome and see how it was always an elite group that were running things all the way up through the Middle Ages. When you look at feudalism, what is feudalism? It's basically a bunch of feudal lords lording it over everyone else. It's always elites running things. So their elites are running things now. I would say that in my opinion, the most powerful elites on the planet, we don't even know their names. We have no idea who they are. I've used this as an example recently, is the Sackler family. So the Sackler family are the ones that came out with
Oxy.
Okay. And then basically paid and blackmailed every doctor on the planet, every doctor in the country, to push this as a non-addictive pain med, with no side effects to anyone who had pain. And they got wealthy. And then books have been written recently showing that they basically targeted middle America. They used the term in emails and internal memos, pillbillies. We're going to target the pillbillies in middle America. And I would say that they were probably one of the most powerful families that you had never heard of until this whole thing came out. And elites don't get taken down except by other elites. So I think a war happened. But some elites went to got with their people in the press and said, "Hey, start investigating this family," and start exposing them. And now they've been exposed. I mean, they haven't been. It's not like they're going to jail or anything. It's not like they're going to lose their fortune. But this is an example of how elites run things from behind the scenes, have all this insane power, all this insane money. You don't even know their names until somebody outs them, and it's usually going to be other elites. People like to call Mark Zuckerberg an elite. They like to call politicians elites. I don't know how much power these people actually have. I mean, when you look at politicians, especially nowadays, I mean, really, who's looking at Biden and Pelosi and thinking they're some grand mastermind schemer who's like in charge and basically taking down the government, taking down this country on their own? No, there's somebody who's feeding them something. And I heard like at the beginning of in the beginning of the year, somebody was like, well, Biden's not running the country, but I think it's Obama and Susan Rice. And I'm like, that sounds about right. I think Susan Rice and Obama probably have a lot to say right now. But that's assuming that Obama and Susan Rice are the masterminds. They're not. They're they're being controlled by somebody else. It was what in the Corbett episode, he brought up Ray Kurzweil as basically the father of transhumanism, the face of transhumanism. He's been talking about transhumanism for decades. And it's like, okay, who funded him? How did he become? I mean, I've known Ray Kurzweil's name over half my life. How do I know his name? Who funded him? Who gave him a book deal? Who flies him all over the world to speak? It's people behind the scenes, man. And really I've come to the conclusion, really the only way that these elites can be cleared is you have either a very, very ballsy guy, not named Donald Trump, um, come is going to rise up and be like, okay, I'm taking this whole thing down. You're going to have to kill me. Or we're going to have to raise up our own elites, who are on our side, who share our values, to take these people down and compete with these people. That's
Yeah.
really the only way I see it. And I only see that the way to start that is on the local level right now. It's really the only way to do it, is to raise up natural elites in your neighborhoods, in your small towns. I don't think this is going to work in Manhattan. I don't think it's going to work in the Bronx, where I'm from. Um, but in small towns, and where even the town I live in is kind of big right now. But we've talked with Buck Johnson about Lockhart, Texas, and we're looking to do good things. He's going to be running for city council there, and we're looking to have some influence there and make some moves. And I think the only way you do that is with people who are elite. That doesn't have to necessarily mean they have to be rich. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to be good looking. What it means is that their priorities have to be aligned with yours, and they have to be somebody who isn't in it for themselves. And I mean, how many politicians, if you were to look at let's just say the 535 people in Congress, I mean, how many of them, you count on one hand the amount of people who you would think, would be on your side. And then you'd even question that because you're not stupid, So I think that's where, I mean, that's a very basic idea of elite theory. Pareto, I talk about the Pareto Principle 80-20, where, anytime you have a group of people, 20% are going to be doing 80% of the work, and 80% are being doing 20% of the work. But something that Pareto, um, a better something I like better from Pareto is, he has a book called The Rise and Fall of the Elites. And he talks about the circulation of the elites, how people go and become elites and then they fall out because they lose their fortune, they lose their power, they lose their influence. Somebody goes to war with them, and then new elites rise up. But I mean, he's one of those people
Oh,
who
okay. So visually, that chunk stays there, and it doesn't matter.
yes,
It's
yes,
just
yes,
okay.
it's
Okay.
power.
So then when you're saying we need to raise, so I like the idea of raising our own elites rather than looking for this one magic person. But it can
Yeah, yeah,
you could do it on two fronts. So what you're saying is that we need to raise elites to get in here that have the same values as us, and as some fall, we need to be able to step up, and that's kind of what you're right. That's
yeah,
how
yeah,
I always have to visualize stuff, man. But yeah, that's kind of what
yeah.
you're saying, right? Okay.
Yeah, because there's always going to be elites. There's always going to be power. It's like one of the things that really makes me cringe. Libertarians and anarchists say, "Oh, we just need to destroy power." Power is not something to be destroyed. It's there. It's to be wielded. It'll always exist, and it's a constant. And I can actually prove that.
So the
And
power and the elite is almost the same in my
yes,
visually homes. The power,
yes,
so you're not going to get rid of it. It's always there.
no,
It's
it's
just about
always
how
there.
if you can get in to play with it or not.
Well, and I will say this, and it's something that I don't know if I said it or somebody else said it, but somebody in our group said it was um what was I going to say? I lost it because I was
Well, right
thinking
now we're
something
talking
else.
about how now if somebody's hearing this and they like what they're hearing, or even me, I remember since like listening to you guys and a lot of the stuff that I was already getting this visual, but yeah, basically the power and the elites are always going to be there. It doesn't mean that it's exclusive. It is an exclusive club,
Oh,
but it's not 100% exclusive. There's definitely leaks that you can get in. You gotta be ready to jump in if that's your calling.
I remember what I was going to say. Okay, so people have this idea. You know the concept of Ancapistan, right?
Yes.
As where
Well,
people.
mostly from you talking shit about it, but the
Yeah, yeah,
idea
yeah.
is that this perfect anarchist
Yeah, I
place.
mean, no one ever says it's perfect, but that's pretty much the way
Sure.
it's sold. Um, and I just said that we could we can get to Ancapistan tomorrow if we had elites that wanted it. That's how we're going to get to Ancapistan. The only way you get to Ancapistan is you have elites that want Ancapistan. And then you have to ask yourself the question, if you don't know who these elites are, why do they want it? What is the purpose of wanting it? Because Ancapistan could go bad real quick unless you have people who know exactly what they're doing. And people who know exactly what they're doing is, I'm sorry, you're always going to have some kind of central planning. You're always going to need experts who
Yeah.
who can design things, who can design systems.
But
And
just visualizing it, it would seem that the elites will never want to create want to won't get into won't buy into it because it would create too many leaks. Because once you create these little encapistans, these natural elites or the leaders of those little become elites that can go into the. So yeah, they're not. Well, I would think that they were not going to want to do that because it creates a new. It's basically creating a new class of elites that can compete with the top class, like so anyway, that's what my thinking would be like. That's probably why not. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I guess you can sell it on them or not.
sure, and I think that happens at the local level. It has to start at the local level. I mean, you're not going to take down the 202 area code, Washington D.C. It's just not going to happen. I mean, if it falls apart on its own, and really, when you look at a lot of the things that happen nowadays, you have to ask whether it's crumbling. Roe v. Wade being overturned, things like that. I mean, it's you have to. So is their power crumbling? Is this some kind of fake out? Are they going? Are they going one? We're going one way and they're going the other way, and we don't know what's going on. But yeah, I mean, I think that once you understand that elites have always been in charge, you have to understand that if you're going to have a libertarian society, a libertarian town, Andrew Popular Liberty talks about private cities. Um, you know, Yarvin's patchwork kind of thing. These are going to be, there will always be elites, and they will always be exercising power. And maybe you don't want to give them a central power where they have power over the police or things like that. But I mean, this is all hypothetical anyway. But what I do know and what I've come to believe 100% is that elites run things. They're always going to run things. You're just going to have to get your own elites in place in order, if you want to change things. And that's really, really hard, because right now there are a lot of them. And I think that's why that might be a reason why things are going bad for them, is because there's too many. And I
Yeah,
think
with the income disparity, right? There's a lot of I had posted recently, and it's just like, well, I was gonna say it was like I posted like being a millionaire and having a podcast is not a big deal. I mean, there's probably they're everywhere, because the like I've noticed that, yeah, being a millionaire or being a multi, you see all these videos, like it's like a nothing thing. Like, not that it's nothing. Obviously, it's something. But what I'm saying is, like, so yeah, there's probably a lot of multimillionaires that have power and influence and all this stuff, and now there's probably I guess I'm freestyling here a little bit, but when I hear you think that there's a lot of them, that's probably what I'm thinking, is that the system that they created to drain it from the, I guess, taxpayer, or from the or through central banking of how you said, you're never going to pay back the debt, so it's all through inflation. That whole game of theirs, possibly, if what you're saying of maybe like you can tell me if I'm wrong, if I'm thinking this way, that they've created so many of their own elites and with wealth that they're starting to I don't know, like it's not like a nice clean foundation. It's starting to kind of show a little bit of the cracks within the own system they created. But I mean, I don't know if that's the right pick or not.
Well, did you ever see the Michael Keaton movie Multiplicity?
Um,
It's a movie where
yes, where he be like yeah, they keep reproducing or something. Or
yeah. So
it's been a while.
When he makes a clone of himself, it's perfectly fine. But then his clones start making clones, and then the clones start making clones, and you get down to the point where you got like this 5th generation clone who's like just standing there picking his nose all day. And that's basically the way I look at the elites now, is that there's so many people who can step up and have influence in an elite role that are just, they're awful. They're not elites. They're not, I like to call elites, like natural elites, like pillars of the community. It's a person in the community that who's salt of the earth. You can go to them with any problem, and they'll, if they can't help, if they're not going to help you financially, they'll at least give you advice, and they'll be very nice about it. They're, the nicest person in the, a very successful person who's very nice in the community.
Yeah, the El Don or El Padrino or the Godfather or whoever.
Yeah. I think in ancient Rome they call them patrons, or yeah, I forget what they.
Is that what you're talking about? Is that kind of what you mean?
Yeah. Okay. And those are the people that, the kind of people that in your town who have your best interests at heart, have the interest of the town at heart. That's why I've always said I would rather live under the mob than live under the government. I'd rather live in a mob-run neighborhood like an Italian. I mean, I grew up in New York City. I've known about the mob, where I had people who know. I've known people whose parents were, whose dad were Bonanno family. Okay. So these neighborhoods that they live in, that they run, are some of the safest neighborhoods on the planet. There's no crime there. It gets taken care of. It gets handled. When you compare that to, downtown Atlanta on a Friday night, if you're not caring, you're an idiot. So, yeah. So I'm not saying mob bosses. I'm not saying that Vito Corleone was an elite, but he sort of was when you think about it, because it was like people would come to him if they had a problem, and he would solve it for them. And, you don't have that with government. You don't have that with elected officials. So, and you have it with elites, but not with the elites we have now. There's just there's too much of a motivation for corruption. That's why I've said people, I know I've said this and it's pissed people off, and I'm sorry, because, I have a way of saying things that just pisses people off, and it's just me. But I really don't think that people should really run for office unless they don't have to work. They don't have to be insanely wealthy, but I think that just not have the temptation be there. And I know that people can get tempted, even the richest people, the richest people can get tempted. But if you're somebody who's saying, I want to get in there because I want to make real change and I'm going to get in there and I'm going to do it, take that, you know, take any of that temptation away by not not having that one, that thing where it's like, okay, well, now I'm in debt and I need money, things like that, So,
Yeah.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Please visit our sponsor, palomaverdecbd.com. It is a small business that my wife, Vanessa, and I have been running for several years now. Besides growing at its own pace, we have also been growing our product line. In the last several months, we've gotten bath bombs, massage oils, different things like that. And recently, brand new, we just got some THCV gummies that are 10 milligrams. They're legal. They're still derived from hemp, but these have some unique characteristics that are especially good for anybody that's an intermittent faster that does some of that fasting. I've been doing fasting like that for 2 or 3 years now. But just like anything, at night when you start getting some of those hunger pains, you tend to snack a little bit. What are you gonna do? Nobody's perfect, but these. So we sampled these out for the last month, and what it is, what I feel is that when I take them, so basically I eat once a day, big lunch, tacos, fajitas, whatever. Today I ate some chicken tostadas, guacamole. It was good. But around this time, I start feeling a little bit of some of that hunger. So I'll eat one of these, and it kind of helps me focus on not wanting to eat. So they call these. They kind of have like a dietary kind of a diet aspect to them, and also like a focus aspect to them. So if that's your thing, if you want to try these out, for sure, visit Paloma Verde CBD. Of course, you can get all of your other CBD products there, and use the promo code Chingasos, CHINGASOS, for 20% off anything in the store. Once again, palomaverdecbd.com. Peace.
That's funny, man. Back in I used to come on like local talk radio for many years as the Ron Paul guy, and after those shows, some people would ask me like, "Oh, why don't you run for office?" And my first thing was like, if I can't even say no to tacos, what makes you think I can say no to power, man? I was like, ask me again if you ever see me super skinny and fit and all that, and then maybe something to go. Maybe I got my shit together, but if I can't say no to tacos, don't ask me that, man. So another episode that you had was number 729, and that was with Curtis Yarvin. You had already mentioned him several times, and he's somebody that has is like an intellectual heavyweight for sure. I would say that in what he puts out. But speaking of the elites and maybe speaking a little bit to possibly the one person that right now has a little bit of momentum. In that episode, there was a conversation kind of about the DeSantis versus the like Disney kind of some of the legislation against I guess it was like the Don't Say Gay bill, where the schools couldn't be teaching stuff about like sexuality and like gender stuff, all that kind of stuff. But I had never heard that take, which was his take was kind of like, and something about it I didn't like, but let me kind of let's see if I'm saying it right here a little bit. But basically, he was like, they those type of takes, they feel good in the short run to the right, but in the long run, it actually comes off as blowback to the right, because the left will see it almost like a super attack on their way of living. Well, they kind of have a long-term kind of game plan, because they're kind of playing on home court advantage, kind of in a way, something like that. So it was kind of like, but my take was like, it almost felt like, because he would speak of like, you don't make a move like that unless you're ready to like completely take over the system and all that. And that seems like too distant, and he almost doesn't really paint a nice picture of how that looks. But at least the way that I've heard it say, but it almost feels like he doesn't want us. When I say us, I mean like the right, because I'm putting this right now in the right left kind of thing. The right to throw any punches, even if they're punching up. Like it just seems like no, you got to take your punches until you're ready to throw the biggest punch ever. But usually fights don't happen like that. The smaller guy needs to be strategic and has to be smart or something. But I don't know. What was your take on that? Because at the time, yeah, I mean, I remember a lot of people had like positive takes, like, oh, DeSantis, he's throwing chingazos and he's giving it to them. But I had never heard that. Like, no, that doesn't work out the way you're gonna think in the long term. What was his take? Was his take right? What do you think on Curtis's take on that, or was it a wrong?
I mean, I can see his point. The what I will say is that Curtis doesn't believe that secession can ever happen. So, like, he doesn't believe Texas could ever leave the union; that they'll never allow that to happen. I don't agree. I see things falling apart quickly, and so I think the greatest thing that could, yeah, there you go, man. God, let me tell you something. I'll be applying for citizenship if it happens. The
We welcome you with open arms, man. No walls here.
Yeah. Well, we better build a wall around Texas if Texas succeeds.
Oh yeah. No, we built one on the south. We better build one on the north for sure.
Yeah, that's for damn sure. She probably should have done that already. But what was I?
West side wall has to be a little bit extra taller, right? Keep the California out.
Definitely. But so I don't agree. I think the secession can happen. And so when I see what DeSantis is doing, I cheer it. I'm all for it. I wish that he would. There's this libertarian guy who's saying that he's going to run against DeSantis and he's going to take votes from DeSantis. What I would love to see DeSantis do, because he's been really good about doing things, going a little authoritarian. I wish he'd go a little more authoritarian, actually. But I'd love to see him be like, okay, I'm passing this executive order that the Libertarian Party can't run ever again in Florida. I mean, just to fuck with them. I mean, and to do it for real. Be like, yeah, you don't even get on the ballot here, bitch. I mean, really, you're gonna. I mean, I understand. Look, DeSantis there are so many things that I could scream and I want to choke him for and everything. Not literally, okay, FBI. I want to metaphorically choke him for. But if the black gay crackhead would have won the election against him, Florida would be a wasteland right now. DeSantis understood when COVID happened that what is their number one industry? It's tourism. We need to keep this thing open. And I think he shut down for 5 days. Then he was like, came to his senses. He's like, whoa, that's insane. And he kept it open and he made sure that businesses could operate as normal. And he basically saved the country. I mean, he said, well, I call Florida a country. So he said, just like I call Texas a country. He saved the country and his country. And, I think King DeSantis, if the other guy would have got elected, he would have done every COVID. He would have been right in line with the CDC, everything that they said, social distancing, masks everywhere, shut down. I mean, he would have destroyed Florida for probably forever. I mean, they're the one industry that they have the most. So the way I look at that is, and I don't think that Wheels, what's your governor's name? I call him Wheels.
Abbott.
Yeah. I mean, he's not in DeSantis. He's not near what DeSantis is. He's done a lot. And even our governor here, basically every time DeSantis passes something, the governor in Alabama just basically puts it right through too. So, but I mean, I think that I don't agree with Yarvin. I think that you take, this is a war and you can't wait. If you wait until all the pieces are in place, they could never come. So you have to have these little brush fires. You have to have these little battles and everything like that. I don't like yesterday, the Georgia Guidestones, someone blew them up. So they tore them down and everything. And I'm one of those people who's like, whatever. I mean, I don't really care. They're gone. Good. Who cares? I've been out there. I've seen them. I've been to the place. But I was like, I want to leave these things up. It's like they have all these books now, these CRT books, these books to teach kindergartners about gay sex and everything like that. Don't burn these books. Keep them, because in the future, when we win and we destroy these people, we're going to have evidence in the future of why we did that. I mean, these friggin' psychopaths that want to, cut your daughter's tits off because she's a tomboy, want to make her into a boy. When I was growing up, they were just called tomboys. And boys who are like playing with dolls. Oh, it's like, I mean, these people are insane. They are literally insane. And they have power.
And that connects back to the transhuman, because that's what James Corbett was saying, right? That's always been a part of that.
Yeah, he believes it's all of this leads to transhumanism, where it's like, oh, so I don't like this arm anymore, so I'm gonna cut it off and get a robot one. But more, it's like, I think what they're looking to do is they're looking to reprogram the human mind. And,
Matrix.
I like my mind the way it is. I mean, it's pretty fucked up, but it's still mine and everything. This is my private property, bitch. But but the so I mean, I don't agree with Yarvin on that, because I believe secession is eventually going to happen, and he's waiting for the day when all of these things are put in place. Where he wrote a great article right after the 2020 election of how Trump could have basically won the election and destroy the left forever. It's a very long article. I had him on to talk about it, and it's good stuff. But that takes like so much coordination with the states, with state legislatures, with people in places. I don't know that you do it that way. I think that you start locally, or like we would start locally, but somebody like DeSantis is really showing the way, and tapping into his Italian heritage and going Il Duce on these motherfuckers, and it's like, and I like it, and I like seeing those wins, because I like seeing the left's reaction to them. The way they react to things, like the whole Roe v. Wade thing, the way they reacted, calling, how many of them on Twitter were calling Clarence Thomas the N-word?
Yeah,
it's like,
I've seen that.
I mean, it's like, okay, that tells you who you're dealing with. You're dealing with some really unstable people, and also some people who really aren't principled. So I think the right needs to get principled about one thing, and one thing only: power. About taking power and wielding it and using it. Somebody on Twitter today or yesterday, it was a conversation that lasted over a couple of days, talking about what do we do and everything. And I'm like, I think that over 90% of the people are really stupid, and they just want to be led. I mean, maybe they're not stupid, but they want to be led. So to go in and change your town, change the government in your town, make it more libertarian or private property based, and Hoppe says one of the first things that you do is you privatize the schools. You do that, and I think if you did that, if you just got together enough people to do it, maybe in a town of 2,000 people, it would take 5 people, 6 smart people taking over the government, taking over the town council, and getting this done. Just do it. Friggin' do it, and watch how people react. Most people are just going to be like, okay, that's what this is now. That's what we are now. You might have some people who rebel. You tell them to leave. Pay them to leave. I'm okay with taking money out of the friggin' coffer and giving them money to leave. Get the hell out of here. If you're not down with this program, get the hell out. We'll help you, or we'll physically remove you. No, that's it. But I think that really what we're just going to have to do is we're just going to have to do it and watch and see how I think people will react to it the way they react to everything else. That's just the way it is now. And I think it's moral. So one thing that I've taken to saying is that if you believe, so, and I say this to libertarians, people who still espouse the libertarian ideology, like wholehearted with all the morality and everything like that. If you think that the world that you want to create is so much better than the world that is now, people will be freer, there'll be less violence, there'll be whatever, people will be more wealthy, whatever. You would be immoral to not do whatever you can to make sure that happens. Think about it. You believe that this is how human flourishing into the future is going to thrive the best, and you're not willing to get the tools and put in the effort to make that happen. That's immoral. It really is, and people can turn it right back on me and go, well, you're not doing that and everything. It's like, okay, sure. But some people are teachers. Some people are just mouthpieces. Some people are just, you talked about me. I'm a DJ. My friend Bird says I'm a facilitator of information. I find people who have information, I bring them on, and I have them give you information. That's what I do. But I'm also telling you that, if you want to do this, if you are like, if you want to be politically active, if you're like, okay, I'm going to be politically active locally, I'm going to do this, then what are you waiting for? Just make it happen and watch how people react to it. And as long as you're not scaring them, as long as they're not scared that they're, it's like, oh, we don't have any police anymore, or things like that. Police protect us even if they don't. People just have to be met where they're at. Well, also, you can give people a private kind of town that still kind of looks like a government. That's probably what you're going to have to do anyway. People want a government. Yeah, this looks enough like a government, doesn't it? So I think this is a lot easier theoretically, but it just has to be put into place.
Yeah, you just got to do it. Yeah, no, I always like to when I hear people say like just do it and all that, I always think like how brilliant Nike was with that whole phrasing, because for an athlete or whatever, just go do it. Just go do it.
That's advertising. Advertising is propaganda. So if you go back and read the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays, probably the most famous propaganda book ever written, he talks about advertising in the whole book. And that's what it is. He's like, advertising is propaganda. And there are times in that whole book where he doesn't even say the word for chapters propaganda. All he's talking about is advertising. But you know exactly what he's doing. It's pretty brilliant. When you realize it. When you're watching commercials, if you understand that you're watching propaganda, you can learn a lot. You can be inspired by a lot too. I mean, that Just Do It ad is freaking brilliant.
Yeah. You still got a little bit of time, Pete? You're okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Just do a couple more episode stuff and then we'll wrap it up. But another one that I liked, man, and it was this one tripped me out, but it was a good one, right? Because I was helping my mom out cutting her grass, and I had my headphones on, so the episode went down pretty good, and the beers in between for sure went down real good. But it was episode 742 with Paul Fahrenheit. And it was about this guy that I've never heard of. It was this Francis Parker Yaquis, about this book called Imperium. And man, you guys were having some good freestyle talk about stuff I had never heard. But I put it. I did a little bit of research. There was not too much that popped up real fast. I did hear some of his jams, some clips out of his book that some people read. I guess that there's some little 15-minute sections here and there that people, that they're just reading them. And yeah, some of it is good. There was one where he did say that Mexicans ignored techniques, but he does say that Egyptians and his people, didn't ignore techniques. It was nothing. I'm guessing that he's thinking Egyptians built pyramids and Mexicans didn't, but I don't know. There's a lot of pyramids in Mexico, but that's more. So so in that I could see a little bit of he's going. like he has a little agenda, but it doesn't take away from all the other stuff that he had in there. I mean, it's not a big deal. But in your readings of them, because you said you started reading it, what is it in those books? Because it was written in the 40s. What is it in those books that still have some that you still can relate to now, because it's years later, and also they might have made some bad calls in that book about, hey, we got to do something now because but it never went down like that. But the calls are still good, even now, they to be at least put out. I mean, I don't know. So the question is, again, like a little freestyle on that, because I know a lot of the people that listen to the show for sure have not heard of Imperium.
Yeah, Imperium by Francis Parker Yockey. It's basically a political science book in history. It's a lot of things combined into one. Like the part one, where he's talking about just a basis of politics, he's also injecting spirituality into it. So it's really like nothing I've ever read before. And it spoke to me in ways because, when I was a libertarian, all I cared about was how I want the world to look, how I want the world to be. And a lot of times people who call themselves libertarians and anarchists ignore how the world is and how the world works. And it was just it's one of those books where, when I look at it, when I study everything that he was, when I know about his life and what he went through, um, being World War II, and then being a part of the Nuremberg trials and seeing everything that he saw. And then I read his political theory and history and actually how the world works without emotion. There's a term called, have you heard the term realpolitik? It's REALPOLITIK. And what realpolitik is you're looking at the world without emotion. So all you're doing is you're reporting on how the world is without making a judgment upon it. And after reading that book, that's where I understood that. I mean, reading James Burnham and the Machiavellians and Suicide of the West definitely put me on the path of realpolitik, looking at the world for what it is and looking at the world without an ideology. And reading Imperium, where he talks about everything from politics to history to culture, to power that is, really important. People just don't realize that. And people think that they can destroy power, and it's just not going to ever happen. And when people say it, it's really cringe, because I used to say it too. So it's like, I mean, when I come at a lot of these things where I'm just like, oh, please, can you guys stop? The reason I'm saying that is because I used to say the same thing, and then I realized, oh, this is really bad.
Yeah, you're listening to your old DJ sessions,
Yeah.
and you're like, they're like, oh, they're all right, but they're not hitting like they used to.
So Yockey just, I don't know what it is. I mean, he's not 100% original. I mean, he's borrowing from people like Oswald Spengler and, Carl Schmitt and all of these great historians and political theorists. But he just puts it together in a way and communicates it in a way that speaks to certain people. I've talked to people who've read it off of my recommendation, and it didn't hit them the way it hit me. And I get that. That doesn't upset me at all. But I've talked to people who've read it, and like, even after reading the first part, there's 5 parts to it. Reading the first part, they were just completely blown away. They're like, I've never read anything like this before. The way somebody's talking about politics, but he's also using a spiritual bent. And he's also, the way he's talking about how, like he says, like one thing he says that people misconstrue is, he says, people aren't of a race, people have race. So like, they possess a race. So it's like, there are a lot of people who are walking around, and it's just, oh, this is life, and this is what this is. And then there are people like, who embrace their culture, where they came from, who they are, who their ancestors were. And that's like having race. So, and he says anybody can basically, he talks a lot about culture, man. he uses the term culture man, and I'm pretty sure that came from Spengler. And culture man is one who understands that culture will always be stronger and more powerful than economics. Will always be more powerful than politics. Where you're from and who you are and what you consider yourself is probably the most powerful thing on the planet. And that's one of the biggest things that I took away, is that if you don't know who you are, where you came from, and what's important to you, and what's important to the people around you and the people you share values with, then you can basically be led astray by anyone who's coming in as a usurper, and governments and elites, people like that. So, I have to read the book again, because it's like it's 600 pages, and it's the first 600-page book I've read cover to cover in like forever. And I sat there over like a week and a half period and just read it cover to cover. And I need to go back over it again. And I started going back over it again, and I found out that it was like I was underlining every sentence, and it's just like, okay, I can't do that. It's like I can't do that. It's like someone has to come up with a study guide for this thing. And it's one of those books that it's one of those experiences that you have to kind of experience. It's like I used to do LSD in the 90s, and people have asked me, so what's it like? And I'm like, no, there's no way. You'd have to experience it yourself. And I think a lot of what Imperium is, especially if you believe in God and you have a spiritual side, it's going to speak to you in ways that other books on political theory aren't, because you're going to pick up on the fact that he's not only talking about like the power of politics and the power, he's talking about how it's also being influenced from above. And I think that
one of those clips I heard, and I had never heard of this idea, but or it phrased this way, but it also maybe ties a little bit to what we've been saying about the 80-20 or something. But he had said like a culture that's, the way I took it when I heard it was like, a culture that's running on all cylinders like badass is a culture that has the creators and the appreciators, and that when the appreciators know their role and the creators know their role, and they're just rolling together, they know their role, that's when like culture and like that's like top notch. So I never heard that, and I respect that take. I mean, sure. I mean, you know your role,
Yeah,
So,
I mean, and when he talks about techniques, I mean, it was really people had just started talking about that. Spengler had his book Man and Technics, and talking about how basically technology, how people are going to handle technology, the birth of technology, and especially technology after the starting with the technological revolution, which is interesting because then you come all the way forward to Ted Kaczynski, and Kaczynski starts talking about what the industrial revolution did to us, and you're like, oh yeah, it did a number on us, didn't it? And he talks about the power process and things like that, Kaczynski. But yeah, so I mean, I think people should read Yaki. I mean, if you don't want to read, a 600-page book, there's a book called The Enemy of Europe that he wrote, which is basically just excerpts, not excerpts, but there's a lot of footnotes out of Imperium in them, and that's only like 90 pages. So you can get a really good idea of what Yaki is all about by reading those 90 pages. And I read it, and there's after Imperium, and there's stuff in there that wasn't in Imperium that made me, more stuff to make my head go insane.
Yeah. So for sure, if you have Paul back on to talk a little bit more of that, I will definitely be jamming that. And the last episode I wanted to talk to you about was episode number 746. And this one was a good one too. It's funny, man. I'm always jamming your stuff when I'm doing yard work. So anyway, I remember this one too. I was doing yard work, and this was with Peter Brimlow.
Oh, Peter Brimlow. Yeah.
And
I figured you were going to want to talk about that one.
And come on, you already know. I was bringing up Mexican techniques. I didn't even know that. And so it's techniques. Like I have to look. What was the context of that? I just saw Mexican. I was like, hey, hold on, about the way you really bringing up Mexicans already. I was like, damn, even back then. But anyway, so you had this guy on, and it was basically he was there to kind of talk about like immigration and this idea of the great replacement theory. And again, I don't agree with a lot of what he was saying, but I just like to hear the jam because I like to hear ideas. I really don't know any new music. The old music I used to jam, I'll jam it when I'm drinking a little bit when it's already ready to go. But really, I like to jam all of this stuff. Whatever's kind of I like to jam ideas basically. But so yeah, I don't, I like the episode. But what was your take on the great replacement theory? I've heard many takes on it. My thing, it sounds kind of like victimy, because if it's like a numbers thing, well then I don't know, make more babies kind of thing. But and maybe it's not that simple. Like but in my brain it just kind of sounds like that. But what is your take on the whole great replacement theory? And again, freestyle on that episode too.
Well, sure. What I can look at first of all is that, and I know a lot of people don't adhere to this, especially in libertarianism, but there is a war on white people. All you have to do is watch the news at night, watch CNN, MSNBC. You will see people on there talking about how evil white people are. I mean, you had the 1619 Project from the New York Times talking about how slavery built this country and everything like that, and white people were responsible for this. And you just have this attack on every once in a while. You'll get some blue check mark on Twitter who'll be like, well, we just need to kill all the white people. And these are from white people. And it's like, you're like, well, what exactly is going on? And then we know this. I mean, like, there was a guy at the Southern Poverty Law Center. I can't remember what his name was, but Peter knew it during the episode, who kept a chart when he worked there of how white populations were being reduced in the United States and like England. Well, why would you? Why? Why? Why isn't it charts of how other populations are increasing? And why does it have to be just specifically on white people? And so when you see that one section of politics, and I'm including Republicans in this too, I'm not letting them off the hook, is really interested in just basically opening the borders and let anyone who wants to come in. I mean, well, why? It's not. It hasn't been proven that, like, well, first of all, it's been proven, especially in California, that illegals can vote. People who are here illegally can vote. I mean, it's just, I mean, they give them driver's licenses. And when you get a driver's license, you have to register to vote. It's like this California law and everything. So California will always be blue. But, I think the one that they want is Texas, which is why you just let people flow over the border. And it has been proven that people who come over here who do get a chance to vote, it doesn't matter where the immigration is coming from, they tend to vote blue. So, I mean, you're basically with the way the electoral college is set up. Like, if Texas goes blue, there'll never be another like Republican president ever again, ever. It won't be. And
okay, no, I never knew that. Is that the way it works for the math?
The math is, if Texas goes blue, there'll never be another Republican president ever again, unless it's a Ronald Reagan. Ronald Reagan won like New York, when he ran. But so that, to me, that's always been the goal, is to turn Texas blue. And you have all of these people who actually say it out loud. So is that what we want? Now, there's the part of me, the accelerationist part of me, who's like, okay, well, if Texas goes blue, then, and there's no way a Republican will ever get elected president again, then secession movements are going to happen everywhere. People are going to be like, screw this. I'm not, this federal government does not speak for me, yada, yada. So that could actually be a good thing. But in the meantime, that would be painful. we see the way, Democrats govern. I mean, say whatever you want about Trump. I mean, the guy was a disaster in so many ways. He did allow the states to do with COVID what they would. And how much was gas when he left office? And how much was food when he left office? I mean, this is really like, when you look at the economy and what's happening now, I mean, this is what they want this.
Why?
This isn't an accident. This isn't an accident.
Why would they want to why would they want to be a war on white people, when I would think that even if, like you said, that 1619 project, a New York Times project, I mean, wouldn't isn't that like a white ran company, or like family? Like what I'm saying is like,
no,
like,
actually, the New York Times is been owned forever by a Jewish family. So yeah.
It's well, back to that, right? Back to that.
The Salzburgers. Yeah, okay.
No, I don't know. Yeah, okay. And so my thinking is like, why would they want to have a war on white people when most people are like, it's simply just a voting thing, but they're going to be voting. Like, it seems like it would be counterproductive to, like, it would seem like a lot of these people that are pushing these agendas, I mean, are they mostly minority people, or are they white people? I mean, like what is the take on that? I
don't know. Power. I mean, you can. It doesn't really. I mean, like, look at someone like Jesse Jackson. Okay, Jesse Jackson has been active in the Black community as a Black savior since the '60s. What has he done to improve Black lives? He's done in Black communities nothing. He's enriched himself. So why wouldn't white people, or whatever, if they came up with some kind of thing where it's like, okay, well, we're going to say that white people are evil and everything, well, then they can be like I don't know. I don't know why they want to do this. Other than power. I mean,
you see, because like, to me, like, it feels like again, I know it was like kind of a simple way of looking at it, but it was like, okay, because I know I've talked to Andrew, and he just says, well, like, oh, Russia's not a threat because they stopped making babies a long time ago, and now they're not going to have the people. So he brought it to like, your population, like your. Mm-hmm. So like, if it's about a great replacement, and if it's, I don't know, like I said, just you would just make more babies. I mean, like, where the news came out.
Who wants to have babies when it's as expensive as it is right now?
So yeah, so what I would say is that, like, Latino, Mexican people, because of their culture of having tias, tios, this and that, mm-hmm. they have a lot of fucking kids because they can all share the babysitting. I don't know. Like, I mean, it just it's all, it's always been that way. Like, I don't know, when my wife and I got married, I told my wife,
there's been incentives for people to have children since 1965.
So then why?
Especially if people are on assistance or something.
Yeah. So then I was gonna say that I remember, like, I told my wife like, oh, we need to have a big dinner room table because I want to fill it up with kids. There was nothing. I was not thinking how I was gonna pay for them, or how. I didn't even think, oh, the government's gonna help me pay for them. I remember just thinking it would be great to have a table full of kids and other family members. I know that was just my cultural bringing. I didn't even think about but I would think, if we're talking like in general here, that I don't know if I'm saying white here in general, if white people are having those conversations like, I want to have a big dinner table to fill it up with kids, or they're just saying, hey, we can only have a small table because we can only have one or two to send to these expensive colleges to get them to have them become elites, and to have them. So like, that's their own shit. Like, I don't know, have more kids. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that's just too simple, but I don't know. That's my kind of take on it. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I know you kind of said that there is a war, but you're also saying you don't know why they're doing it. Maybe it's something more to explore, right? On why they would do it to themselves if it is a war on white people, because it's probably.
I mean, they're destroying. I mean, basically destroying the economy. I mean, they've sent jobs overseas. They've sent like a lot of manufacturing jobs overseas, and then they bring in labor from other places to, I mean, and people can make the argument, oh, well, white people or people in this country don't want to do manual labor or farming labor. Maybe that's true. I don't know. No one's ever told me personally that they think that, agricultural work is beneath them.
Yeah,
But I mean,
no, but you could just say you could say it the same way that you like. Oh, Asians are high IQ and black. Yeah, I can straight up say I've never had and being in construction, I've never had a white person go put an application in. But that
it's
doesn't
also
mean
the area. It's also the
yeah,
area you live in too.
yeah,
Because I mean, like, if you go to where I was living in Ohio for 6 months, everyone who works construction is
yeah,
white.
and then for sure, like white people like that I've noticed are more like higher end construction, like oil field, this and that. Like I mean, so they're doing like so. Yeah, I don't mean it like that, but I mean
There's
it
a lot.
like
There's a lot of Central Americans working those oil fields now too.
yeah, like heavy machinery, all that stuff. Like I would definitely know that. Oh, hey, that's not Juan up there. That's definitely some.
It
So
could be. Come on, what are you doing?
well, in a couple of years, it could be. We have to grow up our own elites in construction. To get them up there and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know why. Why after World War II did Russia and the United States basically want to destroy the German people? Why did they ration them down to 800 calories? Why did they rape German women in the streets? Why was it basically legal to kill German people after the war ended? I mean, I don't have. Not everybody has answers for everything, but you can look at things and you can be like, hey, well, why is this happening? And what is going to be the consequence of it happening? So, um, I don't know. What I do know is when I look around the country and I see cities and localities that are run by Democrats, I see crime, I see violence, I see places that you or I don't want to live. And when I look at places that are run by Republicans or smaller towns in the Midwest, I mean, these are towns where people don't lock their doors. So I don't know. It's like, I mean, if
And that's part of the journey that you're on, right? I mean, you want to interview people and
sure,
that might
I
have
mean,
ideas on why.
everybody I interview, I mean, I don't agree with them 100%. I mean, it just doesn't. But I'm also taking a lot away from them, and taking a lot away, and filing it so that I can know where the arguments are, who's making the arguments, and then if I come up with an idea later on how something works, and that person seemed to contradict it, at least I can remember so that I can hone it a lot better. Um, yeah, I mean, nobody's gonna be. I've never read a. Thank God, I've never read a book that I 100% agree with everything. Because if I did, that would be. I'd be like, I'd have no mind. I'd have no discernment unto myself. It's like the Bible. When I was going to church and calling myself a good little Christian and everything, there were things in the Bible that I just did not agree with and I did not believe, but I dared not say it out loud. In church, because the inerrant word of God when you're a Protestant and everything, but especially when you're a Baptist. But but yeah, I mean, I like ideas. I like bad ideas too. I mean, it's why I've covered. I did a whole 6 or 7 episodes where Aaron and I read State and Revolution by Vladimir Lenin. I mean, I'm not a communist. I don't agree with communism. I think that commies should be redacted, but I want to know what they believe. I want to be able to, if someone says, "Oh, well, I'm a communist," and you don't even know what I believe, okay, let's test that. I want to be able to talk about it. I also want to be able to know what it is, so that when I see it happening in front of me, in government and implementing things, I can go, "Oh, that's communism." That's socialism. So um, I study things that, I've studied communism, I've studied fascism. I've in my life, I've studied Hinduism, I've studied Buddhism, I've studied all of these things, and they all something of all of them stays with me. And I think that it just makes you a well-rounded individual, and also somebody who, you know, has knowledge and can speak to, have conversations with a lot of different people and be able to relate to a lot of different people.
Yeah.
My family in Puerto Rico is just basically freaking communists. I know how to talk to them. It's like I just know how to talk to them, and I'm not talking about like, I'm talking about, no, they like literally went to college and became communists. So it's like, yeah, I want to be able to have a conversation with them and tell them where I think they're wrong. Not at a funeral, but in conversation over, some arroz con pollo or something.
There you go. Nice. You've mentioned that you're black pilled. What do you need to see
I do.
to?
When did I?
You
People
have
keep
mentioned
saying that.
You mentioned on episodes like, "Oh, don't listen. I have my ideas. Don't listen to me because I'm black pilled."
I'm being sarcastic when I say that.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah, I'm being sarcastic.
Okay.
Because
See,
so many people say, because okay, so there people have this.
It's good to clarify it because it really comes off like you're saying it in that way.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I'm being sarcastic. There are certain groups out there that if you don't agree with what they're doing, they will say that you're black pilled, even if you like have an idea for an alternative that might work. So it was just me leaning into the whole, oh, Pete's black pilled. He doesn't, he doesn't agree with what we do. So that means 100% that he's black pilled. I talk about like, I talk about everything from like, getting involved in local politics to growing your own food to, if you can do it and you want to do it, leave the country. There are people out there. One of my advertisers, Mikhail Thorup from the Expat Money Show. I mean, he'll teach you how to do it. He'll show you places you can go if that's what you want to do. I have answers all over the place. So another thing is that I've been saying for a while now is start making more money. And definitely build the business outside of like having a boss, so you don't have to answer. You don't have to take the jab if you don't want to, things like that. So, and then people say that I'm black pilled because they came up with this, like what they think is like the silver bullet that's going to do something, and I don't agree with it. So, yeah, I'm not black pilled. I'm not, as a matter of fact, I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful. And one of the things that makes me really hopeful is I don't think that we've ever been closer to like secession movements than we are right now. So, and I think secession is actually one of the ways that this is going to all turn around. So,
yeah, no, that's my agenda, man. I want Texas to. I want Texas to win. I want, and I'm trying to do it through like a unity way of like through football, because to me football unites. So I'm trying to say, hey, let's win a World Cup. But like I just learned too that we don't even need to secede. That I'm thinking that first we need to form a federation, like apply to FIFA for a federation. Like you gotta have legislators that are on board of like, hey, why can't Texas have its own national team, even though it's still part of the United States? And then that would be the first step to get the culture to, because right now it'll be too political. It's either a right or a left. But if it's just simply with football, it's like, hey, why can't we have a national team? Anyway, that's my own thing. That's my agenda. But
no, I get it. I've seen you when you post about it, and yeah, that's cool. I mean, literally, I mean, that is the one thing that I'm white pilled about is I'm white pilled on secession.
Perfect. So
secession and localism.
Perfect. So yeah, to finalize, can you please talk about some of the projects, events that you might have coming up? I know you go to some events here and there, and any guests that you have that are coming down the line that are gonna spark some interest, and then I guess where people can for sure reach you at.
Sure. The podcast goes on 3 episodes a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Thomas 777, recording with him tomorrow to continue the series on World War II. I'm also talking to Tim Kelly tomorrow from Our Interesting Times podcast somebody turned me on to over a year ago. And it's how I learned about E. Michael Jones, that E. Michael Jones was actually doing interviews. And Tim Kelly is somebody that I listen to religiously. I don't miss an episode that he does. Saturday, I'm talking to my buddy Jose Nino, and we are going to talk all about what the GOP is doing in Texas, all the stuff that they're talking about secession, all of that. So that'll be coming out next week. And then me and my buddy Taylor from Hoppian.org, we're going to start reading Hoppe's Libertarianism and the Alt-Right. It was a speech that he gave in 2017 that really pissed a lot of people off. And I'll be honest, it was head scratching for me at the time it came out. And so and then I write at my Substack, Pete'sSubstack.com, which is just bought that this week so that people don't have to write down friggin' 30 letters in order to get to my Substack. And then the Pete Quinones show on all podcatchers. And we're getting to the point where some people know that I am part owner in a company that makes documentaries. We have a documentary on Amazon Prime that it's called The Monopoly on Violence. And it's basically a history of anarchism and how you can get to not only what how you could possibly get to an anarchist society, but also to like limited government. Tom Woods talks about nullification in it. So there's a lot of good information in that. And we have another documentary coming out very soon. I don't have a date on it because it's still in the editing process right now, but it's called Over Policed, and it's going to be a history of the police, and it's going to basically talk about policing in the United States and just basically how useless they are, and how corrupt they are. We're going to have somebody, if anyone knows anybody about the Rampart scandal in LA from back in the 90s, how they basically were just gangsters killing people, doing hits and stuff like that. I mean, we even got one of the Rampart police officers to come in and talk about what it was like in LA when they were just like basically executing people in the streets, stuff like that. So it's called Over Policed, and it'll be out soon.
Okay. Yeah, man. Thank you, DJ Pete, man. Keep putting out those tracks. I'm definitely a listener, and I hope a lot of people also tune in. Thanks for coming on, man. Peace.
Thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it.